Start recording, and here we go. All right, so box modeling or poly modeling allows us to edit the polygons, basically, of whatever you're working with. So I'm going to start with a sphere, like I said before. Let's just drag a sphere in here, right? Right click. You can either, and maybe I'll go with the edit poly modifier this time, but you can certainly convert to editable poly or add a modifier to it, right? So go from the modifier list and go to edit poly. So this way, if I don't know, take a vertex and extrude it, right? There's a nice little vertex. There we go. See? Isn't that lovely? Yes, very nice, right? I can go back to the sphere, right? Now I've added some vertices here, so if I do anything to change the number of vertices in this sphere, it'll mess up the numbering. So internally, 3ds Max thinks of that vertex as, well, it probably has a number. Yeah, vertex 111, right? Well, the original sphere didn't have 111 vertices. Well, it may have, but yeah, let's not show that message again. Anyway, that's what this warning is about, is if you mess up the number of vertices, it's going to renumber them, and now vertex 111 is going to be somewhere else, and that one nice extrusion is going to be messed up, or whatever. Sorry, question?
For some reason I can't move the sphere at all. It just creates this, it moves independently. I don't know what happened.
All right, cool. Not that cool. Okay, I gotta pause here. Stop. Pause. Okay, so as far as the numbering goes, yeah, I can go back to the sphere level here and maybe just change the radius, and that's nice. And that's not going to mess up the number of vertices. But if I change the number of segments, that might mess me up. Or if I change the hemisphere, well, you can play with those or whatever. Let's see, right, like that. In that case, it may keep the same number and just get rid of the existing vertices, that number of vertices or whatever. So, but anyway, put that back, go back up to the top. Okay, so again, number 1 will toggle you in and out of your edit poly mode. So I'll just make that a little bigger. I would also point out that if you are in sub-object mode, like in vertex mode, then the move tool, the rotate tool, and the scale tool, and these transform tools, in other words, will work on the vertices, but not on the whole object, right? So whatever's selected. And you won't be able to select some other object, right? So if I have another sphere in the scene, and you're trying to click on it or whatever, it's thinking you're interested only in the vertices of this sphere, if that makes sense. Okay, so just keep that in mind, because that can be pretty disconcerting, I guess, when you're trying to select something else you can't, and you're in some mode, right? Vertex mode or something. All right, so a lot of times it's useful to work with edges. So we'll see. We've only done one thing, and that was with the vertex, but edges are a little hard to see when you're in shaded mode, but in the other viewports, like your left viewport or whatever, you can see them. But sometimes it's nice to be able to see the shading and the edges. Does anybody remember what keyboard shortcut does that? What key toggles the edge view with shaded on? F4, yes, very nice, very good. So now I can see the edges. F3, by the way, will turn any view to toggle the shading on and off of that view, so I can see that. Sometimes that's really useful as well. All right. Let's just select an edge here. And right in the selection, I can loop it, right? And you'll see that it just connected any edges that were connected to that edge end to end. And kept going until it hit the other end of that edge, right? See how that works? Okay, the other way, so I'm gonna undo that for a sec. And the other method would be ring, right? So if I hit ring, it'll select all the adjacent rings, or edges, I mean. So all I'd have to do is hit ring and then loop, and then I've got all the horizontal edges going on. Likewise, I could have done that with the vertical edges, although the ring of those and the loop, yeah, that went over the extruded vertex even, so that was nice. But although that would have only, I'll just show you again, if I just loop that, it stops at the poles, right? So it only selects half of those. But if you ring that, it goes all the way around. So either way, kind of works. So that's ring and loop. Another way to do this is if I select an edge, I can grow that selection, right? So it'll just select whatever's next to it or connected to it. So I can see that this original one, and it selected the 3 edges that were connected to that edge. And then you can grow, and that continues. And that works with the other sub-objects as well, so not just edges. All right. What else? Let's try to make something. I was thinking, yeah, I'm going to delete this extruded edge there. So there's 2 ways to delete something. One is the delete key, and that actually breaks a hole in it, right? So that deletes everything connected with it. I don't know if I can do this. If you hit the backspace key, however, that takes it away and preserves the topology the best it can anyway. So now I didn't put a hole in it, right? So if I take a vertex and hit the backspace key, it just takes out the edges connected to it and fills it in with, or just, what do you call it, joins the polygons or the faces that are connected. So that can be useful. In fact, I'm going to do that again. I'll just backspace on that vertex. So I'm going to try to make a face out of this. And so I have these 2 big polygons now. So I go to polygon level, and I can select. How do you select more than one thing at a time? Almost. Yeah, it's control. Yeah. And to deselect, right, so you can hold the Alt key down and click on something, and that takes it away from the selection. Okay.
Wait, did you select them? The polygon?
Yeah, so I'm in polygon mode, first of all, okay? And I have the select tool on, although any of these other tools, the move, rotate, and scale tools, are also select tools. But I prefer to use the select tool so I don't accidentally, especially if I'm selecting multiple objects, if I click on it and I accidentally drag, I'm going too fast or something, then I might actually move or rotate or scale something and inadvertently, right? So yeah, just the select tool, and I'll click on something, and then I'll hold the control key and click on the other one. All right, let's play with some tools here. In the Edit Polygons area of the Modify panel of anything that's editable poly, there are some pretty powerful tools here under Edit Polygons. So I want to use the Bevel tool to start with, because I want to make eyes out of this face, I guess. So there's 2 ways to approach this. One is interactively, right? So I could just click on the button, right, and click on Bevel, and I can click and drag on it, so I can punch his eyes in a little bit, or extrude the eyes in, and then let go, and then move my mouse again and change the level of bevel, right? So the scale of that polygon as it got inserted. So I can scale that in a little bit, and then click again. And then I can click again, move them back out, and then move them up to scale them out. So that produces sort of like an eye socket kind of thing. I don't know. I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to undo. So I'm going to right click to stop this, and I'm going to undo twice, and then I'm going to use the settings, right? So each one of these tools, or any tool that has a little box by it, actually brings up the settings of it. So I'm going to maximize my viewport so we can see. So now I have this little capsule of settings that I can move around, and I can still move around in my scene with that settings going on, and I can set the two things that the bevel does, and that's one is extrude amount, right? So that's the first number, and I think if I hover over it, it'll tell me, but I guess not. And so I'm going to extrude it down a little bit. So now numerically I can get the more precise way to insert or extrude in, and then I can set a negative amount to scale them down, to scale that polygon inward a little bit. And then I click the plus. Well, I could just click the checkbox, which would commit those settings, right? I could click the plus, which would apply and continue, or commit those settings and continue, or I could just exit out of it, right? So I'm going to click the plus this time because I want to do another bevel. So I click plus, and it keeps those settings, so it went in. So I just need to adjust those settings again and bring it back out, and maybe scale it out a little bit, maybe not too much, right? Maybe that was a little bit. Yeah, this is probably fine. It's probably okay. And if I'm satisfied with that, I click the checkbox, and I'm off and running, right? So now I've made some eyeballs. Is that right? Any questions about those settings? Okay. I think I want to go to edge mode, so I hit 2 on the keyboard, or click on in the modifier stack, I can click on edge, or in the selection area of the panel, I can choose the sub-object level I need. So I'm going to go to edge this time, and I don't know, most people's noses, I'm going to make a nose. I'm going to try to make a nose, right? So I'm going to just control click on maybe the 3 edges. Is that about right? Yeah, that's probably good. And I'll try to extrude those. So use the extrude settings again.
So you know how when you make like, what is it, the cone, you can like change how like far in and out it goes. Can you do that with that?
With the bevel? Or with?
Or just like with the edit poly?
In a way, yes. So if I had a cylinder and I wanted to make a cone out of it, yes, I could collapse it into that. Or I could just scale the top edges, or top vertices even. So
you
yeah.
can do it the opposite way, make it wider?
Yep. Just by scaling it, really. But yeah, and we'll do some of that. And then maybe that'll answer your question as we go along. But yeah, definitely you can do stuff like that. It would probably be easier to start with that primitive cone and then go from there, but yeah, sure. All right, so I'm going to set the height, and that's probably, should you be a Roman nose or just okay, never mind. And then the outside, the width of it, so I don't want to go too far with that, but that's a pretty good nose. Well, I'm going to adjust that, right? So let's say I'm satisfied with that. Okay, and then I would go back to maybe the vertex level, and I might want to move some of those vertices, like let the nose ramp out instead of, so I'm going to move that towards the face. So I get the move tool, right? W on the keyboard. The problem is, see how the move tool's not really lined up with that part of his face, right? So what you can do with that move tool is maybe local would be a little better, and see how that local is kind of lined up with, I don't know exactly how that's lined up with, but anyway, the Z coordinate of that polygon. So I could just punch that or move that down a little bit, and then, see, that wasn't too hard to just start making a nose out of that. One of the problems I'm seeing already is by doing that, I can see some creases in those 4-sided polygons. Remember, everything is actually triangulated. Whether it looks like it or not, internally it is. And so, if I go to polygon level, I'm going to select, see that polygon and that polygon have kind of the, there's an edge along there. Its triangulation is kind of not in the direction I would want it to be. I would rather have it the other way. And so there's only one other way to do it. So I can just click re-triangulate, or you can edit the triangulation of a more complicated polygon and just draw it in the way you want it. But in this case, I would just click re-triangulate. Did it work? Maybe I'll have to edit it. Kind of wanted it that way, right? Or just turn it. And I'll just click on that. There we go. That's what I wanted. So I'm just going to turn. That's better. So now I could make that symmetry look a little better as those edges, that polygon has to actually turn that corner. See, it's not exactly flat. But you can make it flat if you want. You can make it planar. So, well, let me right click to stop turning, and then there's a make planar somewhere in here. So anyway, it's probably down here further. Yeah, right there. So if I make it planar, that flattens that polygon. It's not what I wanted to do, but it flattened it. Okay, undo. Is that all right? Okay, question? Let me pause. Let's say, I'll just use a polygon over here, and I'll bevel it out again. So here's bevel, and I'll just bevel it out and scale it, right? Let's say I wanted to just make that a point, right? So I want to collapse all those vertices into each other. So there's a couple ways to do that. One is I could just scale that down to almost nothing, I guess, but it'll cross over each other, right? It'll actually move them. If I get the scale tool and go to local and just scale it in the local, I just want the X and Y direction, not the Z. I don't think that'll work anyway, right? So I just scale it. And if I scale it down, it'll pinch it to just keep going down. It'll go to a single point, right? That's probably pretty good. I scaled it really far, right? I'll scale it like that. So that's the start, but there still is not just one vertex there. There are 4 still, right? So we can collapse those vertices in a way, right? So if I go to vertex level, or hit 1 on the keyboard, right? So 1, and zoom in on those. I still have those 4 vertices. Okay. There is a target weld or just a weld, right? So if I select these 4, and I'm going to use the settings. And as long as my threshold distance isn't too low, right? If I get a threshold distance big enough, it'll weld them all together, right? Into actually one vertex. So that's one way to do it. I also like, so I'm going to show you another way, so I'll escape out of that. Did that work? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I also would like, sometimes I like the target weld, right? So I can just click on one vertex and just collapse it to another vertex. So now I've collapsed all 4 vertices into one just by target welding them together. So that's fun. Yeah. So good question. Yeah, I like that. Now I'll just hit backspace and put it back. No harm done. All right, let's go with the mouth. So kind of the grid's in the way, so I've just hit G on the keyboard to turn off the grid. So that's fun. All right, so I'll just select the polygons I think should make, go to polygon level, and try to get some symmetry going here. And maybe the 3 vertices on the left and right of the nose. Maybe make, yeah, that's probably okay. All right, so I'm going to hit Q on the keyboard, which gets me back to the plain garden variety select tool that doesn't move, scale, or rotate. Right? So that's this tool up where my cursor is, select object tool. So QWER is your select, move select, rotate select, scale select. Right? Anyway, control, holding the control key down. That could be his mouth. Maybe one more. Now he's a big mouth. That's probably okay. Maybe less. Yeah, less. That's probably better. Okay, so I would probably, I don't know, I would tend to want to keep this thing manifold, like watertight, instead of break holes in it. I could just delete those, and then that would be an open mouth. But then you could see inside a skull or whatever, and there's nothing in there, right? And that would be embarrassing. So maybe I would just use the bevel tool and just bring the mouth inward. But I can't really see how far I'm going. Yeah. So right click to stop that before I do it. And I'm going to hit F3. And this way I can see how far I'm going. Or I could have used my other viewports, but I'll just punch it in that way. And then I would scale it up, but not so far that it would go outside the head. There. So something like that, to where it's contained, but there. So, and then maybe I would even move it down a little bit to kind of center that. See how that works? I could even rotate it. Rotate it. Probably want to rotate it on the local coordinate system again, and rotate it around like that. And move it. Yeah, a little too far. A little too far. Okay, something like that, right? So now he's got a mouth instead of just a hole in his head. Is that all right?
How did you make it appear?
F3, we'll talk, right? Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Good. Okay, that's a pretty plain mouth, right? It's like he's ready to eat. Okay. I also kind of want some, maybe some lips, right? So maybe edges. Now I don't really have a way to loop those around because they're just, so I'm just going to control click. There probably is a way to make that. That was a lot of work. So, just to preserve my work, I have this selection, this special selection of edges, right? So I want to save that, right? And so you can, up in the toolbar again, you can create a selection set. So if I click in there, I'll call that lip edges. There. So now, if I click away and even go to some other method or whatever and make a pimple there or something, small one. Okay, there. And then go back to edge mode or whatever. I can pull down this list and just select those edges again, right? So that's like a saved selection. So that's nice. Photoshop has, what is that called in Photoshop? A path? No. Yeah, right?
So you just type it in and that's it?
Yeah. So you can have a whole list of different items that are selected that you can go back to without having to do a bunch of work. So if it took a little bit of work to select, that might be a good way to do it. And then the box right next to it is manage selection sets, so it opens up a little box and you can do stuff with it. So, and add to it, you can, right? So add to that selection. Okay, so maybe extrude these edges. That might be fun. I'll use the settings here, and that was a little much. So I'll set that back a little bit. That's kind of nice. And then maybe increase or that distance. Maybe not go past the nose anyway. How about that? Looks pretty good to me. So there you go. Now we can put some expression on that face or that mouth, right? Try to make them smile or something. So maybe in vertex mode, I would select these two vertices, like right under the nose. Control click. And maybe not in local anymore, but world. So I can move those down, right? Except I'm crossing those edges because the triangulation on the faces are weird and whatever. So I'll just move that down a little bit. But instead of doing each one, maybe it'd be nice to use what's called soft selection. So I'm going to use the soft selection and turn it on. And what that does is it color codes the selection. So red is completely selected and blue is completely not selected. So with that, actually that distance might not be bad. So now when I move it, see how it moves the other ones but not as much, right? So there we go. And it moved his nose a little bit too, but I'll change that. So there he goes. Totally changes expression. Yeah, that's a mood changer right there. Soft selection. Okay. Enough. And this is a good idea to maybe target weld the corners of the mouth. That might be a good one. So yeah, that'd be fun. So I turn the soft selection off and go to target weld. And maybe I'll just click on, and if you can't see it very well, just zoom in and target weld. And I'm getting some vertices. Yeah, I'll have to move that, but that's okay. Target weld. That one worked all right. That one just had a bad triangulation. So maybe if I just turn it, it'll turn out all right. So if I select that polygon and turn it, or just re-triangulate it. There we go. Yeah, that's all I needed. It's real thin right there, but that's okay. Oh, soft selection's still on. Turn that off. There. Let's make some ears. Why don't we? So perhaps I don't really want to delete like I did the eyes. I don't really want to delete. I probably shouldn't have done the eyes anyway, but the ears are just under the eyes. So maybe these 4, and I want to keep those together and not like delete the vertex in there and make it just one polygon because I want some inner ear detail or whatever. Get it? Inner ear. Okay. So so it's 3 over under the eye, so over here, 3 over, hold the control key down, right? There. So now I have both of those selected. And, actually, I just want to do one at a time anyway, so let's just go back to my Q tool. Okay, there's a fun one called Hinge from Edge. That's in the edit polygons. So hinge from edge. And I'm just going to use the interactive method. And I'm going to click on the edge that I want to fold the ear forward. Like kind of the ears are attached to the front of the face. So that's where I want to hinge those. So I just click and drag. You can punch it in or out. And I don't know how much I'm doing, but if I look at the bottom of my screen, I can see how much I'm doing. So I'm just going to guess maybe 15.5. And that's maybe, I don't even know what that is, an angle. So that gave it a little bit of ear. Maybe needs, those are pretty small ears. How about I undo that and give 3 sets. Hinge and 15-ish. Well, that's different now, but okay. Pretty good. Do the same thing on this side. Right click to stop hinging. Is that right? Yeah. It's pretty far back there, but okay. Something like that. One's not as much as the other, but that's a little asymmetry is okay. There we go. Pretty fun. Right. So what about I could select this edge and Not sure what I want to do with it actually. Maybe extrude it inward. A little hard to see that way, but punch it out a little, and bring it in a little. That's sort of what I was going for. See if I can do the same thing on the side. In, get it out. Something like that. So left and right widens the extrusion, up and down sets the depth of the extrusion. So something like that, I guess. Okay, let's say I'm satisfied with that. Not that I really am. Kind of like it though. Okay, well, most faces and heads and stuff are more top to bottom, aren't as round as this, spherical. So one more little thing on the vertex and soft selection. And maybe I'll select the top vertex and just move it up. Well, that's not very good. So I can change the bubble amount, so the fall off. So I can increase that, but then that's going to affect the eyes, so a little bit. And then increase the bubble amount. And now when I move it, I'll try that on the bottom as well. Now, one thing about the soft selection is if I do move it, right, I didn't move it, if I move it and I try to move it back, it's going to actually, you'll never get it back to the right place, so you really have to undo if you want to make that happen. And then I'll just increase the fall off here and make that a little more long. There. Okay, so that's, there we go. Pretty good. There's a little more character anyway. Okay, any questions up to here? Is that all right? Kind of just freestyle forming the face. Is all right? No questions? All right, cool. Well, it doesn't look that great, but I'm going to add a modifier here and try to make it better, right? So I'm out of any sub-object level, right? So if I'm in like polygon, I just click on polygon or hit 4 to get back to edit poly, so I can just deselect the whole thing if I wanted to. But I do want to select it, and I'm going to add a modifier. So the problem is, well, the potential problem is that if I have it on polygon or edge or something, and I have some edges selected, and I add a modifier to it, that modifier can likely just act on the selected items. Okay, so for example, I just go polygon and maybe select some polygons back here with the Q tool, turn off soft selection. Okay, let's say I have this patch of polygons selected, and I want to add a noise modifier, and I forget to get out of polygon level, so I just merrily go about my business and add a noise modifier and just set the scale low, maybe 7%, and set the Z strength. Well, let's see if I get any strength going on here. X, Y, and Z. There. So see how I wanted to apply it to all of him, all of the head, but it only applied to the selected objects, selected polygons. Okay. So I go back to polygon, right? Here's another trick. Maybe I wanted to apply that noise, but I wanted to do it at the vertex level for some reason. Get a little more granular or something like that, right? So I could click on vertex, and that doesn't deselect those polygons, right? But then I'd have to remember which polygons I had selected to get the vertices that on the same polygons or whatever. But what you can do is hold the control key before you click on vertex. Now that only works, as far as I know, I haven't tried it in the latest versions, but if you hold the control key and click on vertex, it actually selects those vertices associated with those polygons. So I can pass that selection to a different sub-object. And therefore, I can keep that noise on those vertices. Anyway, if I get out of that and then go back up to noise, then now the noise is being applied to the entire object. Nice. Okay, well, I didn't want noise, but I do want, so I just delete that modifier just by clicking on the trash can down here. And I'm going to add a Turbosmooth. This is like a quick way to just smooth the mesh, right? So Turbosmooth, see how it adds, it like doubles the number of polygons around. Every polygon got like 4 more polygons. So that smoothed everything out a bit. So nice. And that's one iteration. I could go to 2 and really be careful because you could crash the machine going too high. But that's 2 iterations and it's quite a bit smoother. So I could look for where I would want, maybe pinch the ears up a little bit. And so I could go back down to vertex level. And this would be really difficult to see all that, right? So I could not show the end result. And I can now keep, well, there's 2 ways to do that. Show the end result and just turn off the Turbosmooth, right? Or leave that on and just don't show the end result as I pass up and down the stack of things that I'm doing to the sphere, right? So maybe I want to round off the eyes a little bit, right? So in the vertex, get the move tool and maybe local again. Maybe not. Yeah, maybe back to world. And I'll just have to move it in. And up a little bit. So I'm trying to round off that eye a little bit and hopefully let the Turbosmooth do the rest of it. So in this case, I kind of want to fold the eye down a little bit, so it's kind of hard to do. Sometimes that's easier to do in another view. Yeah, it might work. All right, let's see what that eye looks like now, right? So get out of vertex mode, go back up to Turbosmooth, and not much of a difference really. A little more round, I suppose, but yeah. All right. Is that okay? So I kind of want to use this head in a future assignment. So I could make this like a mini assignment. Just make a head, make a face from a sphere using these tools, and we can make, yeah, let's make that an assignment. So you can, and I'll just pause the recording and we'll just answer questions. I'll just help as needed and we'll go to that point. Oh, I guess we're still recording. Okay. The more details you have, the less the Turbosmooth will mess it up, right? So for instance, if I put maybe these edges around the mouth, let's go ahead and, I'm gonna go ahead and select again these edges. Oh wait, I already have those, don't I? I forgot. Lip edges. Yeah, see, I actually changed the vertex count and stuff, so that selection got ruined because I target welded those, and so now it's no good, right? So I'll just have to manually do it again. So my idea here is I'm going to do another, I'm going to put more edges here than here to try to have more control over the shape of the lips that the Turbosmooth affects. Okay. So in this case, maybe not another extrude, but a chamfer, right? Chamfer, the smooths out an edge, hopefully. So I'm going to go to its settings and change the chamfer amount up a little bit, not much. And so I can see those edges increasing. If I go too much, it's going to break it, but just a little bit. And I can see around there that I've just increased the number of edges around those lips. And then I'm going to increase the number that it takes to round it. And now those lips are a little more rounded. It may be a good idea to scale those up a little bit because it's still really thin, but I'm just going to use that as an example. And then when I go back to hit edge, get out and go back up to Turbosmooth, now my edges are, well, much more defined, right? So, like the nose is a good example also. See how it kind of just, the Turbosmooth just kind of flattened that nose out? So if I wanted to preserve like the edges of the nose where it like it protruded from the face or whatever, go back to edge, and I would do the same thing to the edges around the nose. And I might even move that around, so before I do that, but yeah, I'm gonna move that vertex. So I have those selected, that's fine. Take that vertex and move it. Maybe even up. Yeah, something like that, and maybe move this one down. Little hook nose there, slight. Okay, so go back to edge, and I still have those edges, and I'm gonna select the final two edges there, and I'm gonna do a chamfer around those. I'm not gonna have, let me move these vertices in. Oh, instead of moving them, I'm going to select the two opposing vertices and use the scale tool. That'll preserve my symmetry. Right. See how that works? You can scale pairs of vertices, and that moves. All it does is move them. So you're just scaling the distance between them, really. So I think that's really neat. Anyway, back to edges, and I'm going to chamfer this. Let's see how that works. Yeah, maybe not that many, but that's a nice smooth transition, actually. Let's knock that down a little bit. I can't really increase that too much. Well, I don't know, it stopped at that edge. Let's just call that good. And then Turbosmooth now, and now you can see that the transition between his nose and his face is preserved, and I might want to do the same thing with the bridge of the nose or something like that. So did that kind of answer your question?
A little bit. I just can't have the divot on the one eye and then not the other.
Yeah, and if you notice, there's more edges around that eye. So you can take those edges out just by selecting the edges and hitting backspace, and then that should make the eyes look the same. Yeah, good. Good questions. Good.